So I think we all knew this one was coming. Sooner or later, I'd have to stop running and finally talk about it. And out of every game I've reviewed on this channel, this one might be the one I was dreading and kind of looking forward to the most. Now, this doesn't mean I hate Kingdom Hearts 3 by any means. No. But when it comes to pretty much any title in this franchise, 3 has always been the most controversial to talk about, since every discussion usually ends up into a bloodthirsty rage on both sides. One defends this game to the end and back as the pinnacle of the franchise, and all of its complaints are stupid. While the other doesn't see anything good about this game and sees it as a worthless disgrace to the franchise. I'd argue that it's one of, if not the single most divisive Square Enix game in their entire library, beating out things like 13 and nowadays 16 Final Fantasies if you were curious. But after so many years since its release, I think it's time to ask ourselves if it really deserves that divisive split. With this review, I'm hoping to see if it did or not. With that said, let's stop stalling and get into my review of Kingdom Hearts 3. So if we're going to effectively go over what this game did to be so divisive amongst the community, we have to talk about what it brought to the table, the good and the bad. So let's start with the good. First off, the graphics. God damn, this game is beautiful. Kingdom Hearts 3 took a long time to come out. That part alone is one of the reasons people were upset with it, but good God, did this game look pretty enough to justify that length. Every single world in this game looks stunning beyond belief and captures the Disney vibe to a T, making it genuinely feel like you were part of the movie's world. The 3 best examples are first and foremost, the Toy Story world. As a huge fan of Toy Story ever since I was a kid, with Toy Story 2 actually being one of my favorite movies of all time, it was amazing to be able to be the size of a toy and run around with Woody and Buzz, and Galaxy Toys, and most of all Andy's room. Plus, being able to control mechas to kill Heartless was rad as fuck. Honestly, one of the coolest things I've done in a Kingdom Hearts game. The Monsters Inc. world feels like a giant factory. Also, I love the added detail of traveling by the door system, alongside making it happen after the events of the first movie, so you get to see Sully and Mike hang out with Boo. But the absolute best one to me would have to be the Pirates of the Caribbean world. Not only was it the most impressive on a visual level, holy shit, look at this. This is genuinely one of the best looking worlds I've seen in a good long time. But its additional content of being able to travel around in a ship and engage in battle with other Heartless while on the vast seas was so cool. Plus, you could basically just explore the entire area, making it feel like it was a whole extra game was tacked onto it. If you couldn't pick up on it, I think a lot of these worlds were pretty great. Some aren't. Some have very big problems we will be getting to later, but for the most part, they're fantastic, and some of the best Kingdom Hearts has to offer. Something I can also say about the combat as well. Combat in Kingdom Hearts 3 is very, very good. It's got problems, and I know some people may not agree with me on it being good, but let me explain first. Yes, it has its issues, like I've said, but we will get to those later. For now, we're being positive, and I've got a lot of positives to say about this gameplay. On a surface level, it's what you'd expect to see from a Kingdom Hearts title. Fast, responsive action combat, with an emphasis on mixing together magic items, shot locks, which now had a cool ability to lock onto an opponent and fly to them to continue a combo, and unlockable skills to turn Sora and friends into unkillable gods as you rip apart the Heartless in front of you. But that's only the surface level stuff, as Kingdom Hearts 3 brings a lot of new experiences to the table for the best gameplay possible. For one, you can now upgrade Keyblades to make them stronger. As you progress throughout the game, the materials you get for synthesis can now be taken to Moogle, and they will make your Keyblade stronger in exchange for said materials. In addition to the Keyblade getting stronger with strength and magic increases, they will also gain special skills like Combo Plus or Blizzard Boost. This is actually my personal favorite new idea in this game, as by utilizing this, you had more of a reason to use older Keyblades instead of just ditching them for the better option in the late one. If you want to power up Kingdom Key and solo run with that, you can. Do you want to use one of your later Keyblades as the full thing? Sure, go right ahead. And I love it. This of course also ties into another new major ability you get in this game, the form changes. Coming across as an evolution of the drive gauges introduced in Kingdom Hearts 2, changes are special skills tied to every Keyblade that when you max out the combo gauge, I guess you could call it the combo gauge, I actually don't know what it's called, you gain the ability to utilize a new form. The best aspect of this is outside of the original Kingdom Key and DLC stuff you get, plus the Starlight Keyblade you get later in the game or through that one phone event, which I actually did when I had this on the Xbox, every Keyblade form change you get is genuinely unique. An example being Hercules' Keyblade turning into a shield, giving you lightning attacks, and its ultimate being this crazy chariot move. The Toy Story Keyblade turns into a giant hammer and lets you smash enemies with it. It can later evolve into a drill to pierce the heavens. The Pirates of the Caribbean Keyblade turns into a big flag that you slap people around with. Another Keyblade becomes dual pistols, and plenty more. And then one becomes a giant frying pan. There was a vast amount of creativity here that made unlocking and using new keys even better than it was before. You can tell the developers were having a lot of fun when they were making them. These two new mechanics also tie into Kingdom Hearts 3's other new mechanic. Yeah, 3 introduced a lot to the series, and that was the ability to equip and swap through multiple Keyblades. Now, equipping more than one Keyblade at a time was possible in Kingdom Hearts 2, but it was only possible through drive form customization. Here though, Sora can hold up to 3 different Keyblades at a time, and he can swap between them whenever he wants in battle, which is a total fucking blast when you were slapping the shit out of enemies, then you just immediately swap to a different Keyblade to beat them up some more. The best part about this was when a Keyblade enters its form change, you can swap over to a different Keyblade, and that form change is now pocketed until you go back to that Keyblade. It doesn't go down, it doesn't burn through any sort of meter whatsoever, it's there until you want to use it again. That is so awesome for combat potential. It really feels like they wanted to innovate the fuck out of this game for future entries, and boy oh boy, they sure did. It is honestly one of the best combat systems in the business. It makes me very curious to see how 4 will implement this stuff, since we're getting reaction commands pack for that. I'm hoping to see a mixture of both, but we will see. And that pretty much wraps up my pros in terms of gameplay. So now, let's move on to the characters and the story. Both are which are as solid as you would expect in an ordinary Kingdom Hearts game. But you see, this was no ordinary Kingdom Hearts game. This was KH3, the game that was meant to be the end of the Xehanort saga. The end of our long journey in our battle against Organization 13. And admittedly, it accomplishes being the finale to the saga pretty well. It's got problems. Oh boy, it's got problems. But for the most part, it's very solid. More than anything though, I'm just kind of happy to see that not only are Donald and Goofy and Sora together again, a dynamic that I have really missed since I think the last time they were together was Recoded. But that was with a data Sora, so it's really nice to see them interact with the real one and joke around with each other again. But more than anything, I am so glad Kingdom Hearts 3 brought Sora's snark back. I've always felt like Dream Drop really neutered his more sassy behavior that made him more just a nice kid than the sassy teenager we had grown to love in 2. So it was great to see that sass back in full force. Seeing him go back and forth with Donald and Goofy and shit-talk villains like Marluxia was so good. It made me smile and laugh again. I know some people have issues with how he's written in this game, feeling that he's a little too stupid at points, but outside of the phone scene, I personally think he's handled very well. Plus, looking back on it, I can kind of forgive the phone scene, considering I don't think anyone taught him how to use it in the first place. So I can kind of get behind him being confused. I personally would understand that very well. It's still kind of weird they never explained how to use that phone to him, but whatever. Another pro to this game story is just how much more Disney worlds and its characters feel like they were part of the narrative. Moments like Sully throwing Vanitas through a bunch of doors, or the best scene in the game being Woody telling Xehanort that nobody loves him.
Darkness is the heart's true nature.
You serve no purpose in life. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
Are absolute highlights. It made me really glad we got to see stuff like that. Sometimes I do think it can look a little jank, like during the Tangled section where Sora, Donald, and Goofy are just put there where Rapunzel's having a good time, or in the Frozen world where Let It Go is playing and the 3 of them are just going like, what's going on? But for a large chunk of the game, it works rather well. And that's really all I have to say about the story and characters. They're both handled very well, plain and simple. So let's move on to my last bit of praise, and that is, without a doubt, the music. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise considering who's at the helm of the soundtracks. The fucking GOAT Yoko herself is just straight up incapable of delivering a bad soundtrack. Personally, I think 3 is some of her best work yet. The Demon Tower OST and the final boss theme are genuine masterpieces that I can't help but listen to over and over again. There's one track that I think is better than both of them, but that was in the DLC, and when we start glazing the DLC, I'll definitely bring that up. Just know that her soundtrack is once again fantabulous, and solidifies her once again as a timeless creator. With that said, those are all of my pros. So now it's time we moved on to the cons. Ooh boy, this is gonna be one for the ages. Okay, so now that I've gone over everything that I think Square did very well with this game, I think it's time we went over what I think they didn't. And since I don't really have any complaints in how the game looks, let's just get into my gameplay issues instead. So I'm pretty sure everyone who's played this game knows what I'm going to rag on the most. But before we get to that, I want to go over a few other complaints I ended up having. First off, some of the design decisions kinda confused me. One of them was the lack of Disney boss fights. For some reason, Kingdom Hearts 3, despite making much more of an effort to include the Disney side of the storyline in these games, barely ever has you fight a Disney character as an end-of-world boss. Pretty much every time outside of like maybe 1 or 2 moments, you just end up fighting a big Heartless instead. Frozen World, you fight a Heartless. Tangled, you fight the Heartless. Every time I saw it, it always just threw me off whenever this happened, because it's not like they're not in the story. You literally talk to Randall during the Monsters Incorporated universe, who straight up says he's working with the unversed. So you assume you're gonna fight this fucked up unversed Randall, but no, you just fight a blob monster instead. I legit don't even think Randall gets mentioned in the final cutscene after you talk to him, like at all. Do you know how long I wanted to punch this guy in the face for the shit he pulled in his movie? And then I learned I don't even get to do it? Get out of here with that bullshit, man, come on. Monsters Incorporated, like I said, isn't the only offender though. In Toy Story, you don't even fight Zurg. I'll give him points that you fight a spaceship, but like, wouldn't a possessed Zurg or Buzz Lightyear make more sense? The bosses, of course, aren't the only problem with these worlds, as some really suffer from some pacing. The biggest offender of this is the Frozen world. I mentioned earlier that you don't really fight any of the villains, so if you were expecting to fight like a frozen, heartless Elsa, which feels like they were honestly setting up with that world, you don't get it, you fight a giant ice wolf. But more than that, it barely feels like you interact with the story of Frozen in its own world. There's been stories upon stories shared about this one, and it's one of the complaints I totally agree with all of its problems. Like mentioned before, the pacing is weird, the final boss is just, you know what, I've harped on the boss enough, but I think the biggest weakness of this world is how Larxene is there. Yeah, Larxene is back, and she doesn't really do anything in this game. Like, I assumed that she would be here and you would like fight her at some point, but she just kind of shit talks you throughout the world and then just leaves. It's very easy to see why so many people don't like this world, because it's easily the one that feels the most mishandled out of everyone in 3. Which sucks, because when you do get to fight a Disney boss, there's some of the best fights in the game. Big Hero 6 has the whole Dark Baymax battle, which was honestly pretty fucking rad. Getting to fight the original Baymax was such a genius concept. And then you had the battle against Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, Davy Jones got his own boss fight before Randall or Zurg did. Let that sink in. Oh man, it is just so bizarre. I haven't found any articles out there that explain this, so if someone knows why, I'd really love to know, but it really leads to a pretty weird feeling about this game. Another issue I had with the game was how much it neutered the flow motion mechanic. Compared to how fun and versatile it was in Dream Drop, arguably being one of the best things that it added, flow motion in 3 just kinda sucks. It doesn't have as much range as it used to, and areas are just too open to really utilize it, outside of maybe a couple attacks. The only time you actually need it equipped is in some sections in Arendelle. Outside of that, pretty much worthless. And you're better off just unequipping it so you can utilize the skill points on it instead. Alright, I've said my piece on those. Let's get into what you've all been waiting for. Let's talk about the single most controversial part of the game. The attractions. Like Keyblade swapping and the form change, attractions were introduced as a new way to shake up gameplay of 3. And boy oh boy, they were not implemented well. At all. Sure, they looked cool, and the idea of using what is essentially Disneyland as attacks to defeat enemies is actually a pretty fun concept. They just weren't utilized very well, and the main reason they failed came down to 2 major aspects. First off, they were way too broken. Compared to other aspects of the gameplay, like the form changes that actually required you to work for the power-up, attractions are just simply attained by hitting an enemy with a big circle around them once, and then you got them. That's it. They then can be used to destroy every enemy in the battlefield, and you move on. It was such an abusable ability that just made every encounter way too easy. They honestly really should have been summons. That would have worked so much better than having them appear in what felt like every single battle. That's honestly their second problem, really. They just appeared way too much. After the second world, I was just sick of seeing these things. It's fun to have the first couple of times, but I really think they needed to be spaced out a lot more. They did eventually get the ability to turn them off, but it wasn't really implemented very well. And if you're curious about that one, I'm gonna be real, that's probably should wait until I make the Remind video, as that will be when I share my full thoughts about it. But even with the proper implementation, I don't think it would have fixed the other major issue of Kingdom Hearts 3, and that was its severe lack of any challenge whatsoever. Now, Kingdom Hearts titles haven't exactly been the hardest series around, outside of their critical modes, but even then, they were rarely ever this easy to completely tear apart. It's not the easiest, that still probably goes to Dream Drop just due to its poor game balance, but its general lack of any real challenge in 3, barely ever pushing you to engage in its mechanics as a result. Stuff like form changes and keyblade swapping just kind of end up sitting in the back corner just due to how strong you are by yourself and, again, the attractions. Critical mode was eventually added, but it still kind of baffles me that to this day, we didn't just start with the option. I'm hoping when Kingdom Hearts 4 releases in 2070 billion that they just let you start out with critical mode, because I'm kind of tired of having to wait for it in pretty much every game at this point. Other than that, I have no other gameplay issues, so let's get to the story. Truth be told, don't really have a lot to complain about outside of one or two moments. First is the pacing in the third act, once you save Aqua. It's probably just due to the fact that everyone was finally together at this point, but it really does kind of feel like you were supposed to do one more world before you explore and go to the Keyblade Graveyard. I don't know, this might just be a me thing, but it really does feel like there was meant to be like one more section in between all of the cutscenes before you go to the Keyblade Graveyard for the final battle. I had assumed they would just have you explore the Dark World with Sora, Riku, and Aqua at that point, but no, just cuts to saving Ventus and then on to the final part. Feels like a really missed opportunity. What a shame. The second complaint has to do with Pete and Maleficent, and how they do basically fucking nothing throughout the game. Their whole narrative is looking for the black box you learn about in the back cover movie, or whatever that stupid phone game was, I don't remember it. And that's it. That's all their screen time is dedicated to, just interacting with characters looking for the black box. That's it. One time they interact with the cast members, they just insult Sora, and I don't think they talk to him ever again afterwards. They are the worst part of this game's story, as their whole subplot does nothing but waste our time and make them feel absolutely irrelevant to the narrative. I get that they're supposed to be set up for later Kingdom Hearts games after this, and all the other entries and all that. Good God, they really should have been implemented better, because I just rolled my eyes and didn't care every time I saw them on screen, wasting the time that could have gone into telling this story. Other than that, I don't have any other complaints, so let's get on to my final thoughts. So now that we've reached the end of the video, after a pretty thorough, I'd say, revisit of this entry, what do I think of this game? Does it get more hate than it deserves? Honestly, yeah, kinda. It definitely has its issues, don't get me wrong. But even with those misses, I still think it's a solid ending to the Xehanort saga. Considering, how long it took to come out, it's no surprise it was scrutinized as much as it was, though. A lot of people had to wait many years for this conclusion, and for some, that was a little too long to justify what we got. But for me, I'm just kind of happy to see people are starting to come around to it now. It's nice to see, and I think it's safe to say that my final rating for this game is an overall satisfying 8 out of 10. And with that, we are done. Thank you all so much for watching this video. It's kind of hard to believe that after so long, we're finally almost done with the Kingdom Hearts reviews. A few more to go, and then we'll do something like, I don't know, Golden Sun or whatever. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. If you'd like to follow along on these kinds of journeys to see what happens next, make sure to like and sub down below, hit the bell for some notifications for when videos go up, and leave a comment down below if you want to chat or help me on the algorithm. We're on our way to 1K, and I think we can do it this year. That's all, folks. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time for more RPG content.